My name's Kate Weaver Patterson, and I am a Greenville native, and I am the Deputy Director of National Programs for an organization called Root and Rebound. At Root and Rebound, we work with people who have somehow been impacted by the criminal justice system, and we do legal services, policy advocacy, and education to help folks who have been impacted overcome the legal barriers that arise from having a criminal record. One thing that a lot of people who haven't been involved in the system don't realize is that there are often lifelong consequences to even a minor criminal record that can go to housing. Any landlord you apply to is going to run your background. Employment, again, employers run backgrounds. Your family stability, whether DSS has been involved with your family, parole and probation, fees you may owe. A criminal record can have an impact across someone's life, and overcoming those barriers can be really difficult. So at Root and Rebound, both in South Carolina, where we run a statewide program, and nationally, we seek to help people overcome those barriers and reach the goals that they set for themselves, as you know, people who are much larger than their criminal records. So a lot of people have the question of what is homeless court? And homeless court is a relatively new concept in the legal system. And homeless court is a criminal court. Sometimes people get confused between the criminal and the civil system. In the United States, we have criminal cases, which are handled on the criminal side of things, often by the same judges, but the state is bringing charges against someone. And then on the civil side, you have things like family law. That's where, if somebody gets sued, that happens civilly. Evictions also happen civilly. So homelessness can reach into both sides of the court system. But when we talk about a homeless court, we are talking about a criminal court. And we are talking about the phenomenon that we have seen in America throughout our history, but particularly over the last 40 years with the rise of mass incarceration. So much of that has come from the criminalization of poverty. We know that people in the system are typically people of lower socioeconomic means. And we also know that communities of color are more impacted by the criminal justice system than other communities. And what homeless court seeks to look at is lower level crimes. Typically, we are looking at city, municipal crimes. So we're not talking about murders. We're not talking about armed robberies. We're talking about minor offenses that often come simply because someone is homeless. So trespassing because someone is sleeping under the awning of a building, public disorderly conduct or public drunkenness. People who are homeless can't sit at home on their couch and drink. So often they do it on the streets, and that can lead to issues. Public intoxication, people using the bathroom in public places because they don't have other places to go. And so we have tried to think about how have we as a system criminalized certain acts that really arise directly from poverty. And as a system, we are trying to get better and still have a long way to go about how we can, rather than send people to jail, divert people such that their lives are improved and the community as a whole is improved. So when people come into a homeless court, they can be run in a variety of different ways, but typically they come in and they enter into a program through some sort of social service provider whose ultimate goal is to get them stabilized and housed. And in working through that program, if they are successful in it and they get support from a lot of different places, then they're pending and often prior charges that, again, are the really low level charges of things that arose directly from their homelessness or poverty, will be dismissed or expunged from their record. that has a great economic benefit to folks in terms of getting things off their record and not having even minor charges can really derail people from finding employment or finding housing. It's good for the community because rather than take people to jail, where at least in Greenville, we pay $51 a night to house someone in jail, we are taking them to the places where they need to get services, mental health providers, homeless shelter providers, employment counseling. So we are, rather than just kicking the can down the road, the point of homeless court is to really get people out of the system and keep them out of the system. And I think that really goes to why homeless court is important. One thing that the last 40 years have taught us in the United States is that an increase in incarceration is not the way to solve our crime problem. And it has unfairly and discriminatorily impacted certain communities, including those who experience homelessness, like I mentioned, low socioeconomic communities and communities of color, in a way that has been incredibly negative for those communities and not particularly helpful in terms of lowering crime rates and keeping people safer. So it's really important for us to be rethinking, how are we applying justice? What does justice mean? And how do we, rather than just stop the problem for one night, 2 nights, 5 nights, and derail people's lives by taking them to jail, how do we really come in and provide a safety net such that they can get out of the situation that they're in, which often comes from so many different factors in their life, and the way that we see intergenerational cycles of poverty and criminal records that can be incredibly hard to break and get out of. So how do we as a system, how do we as outside advocates really begin to advance change as opposed to status quo that we know isn't working? And homeless court is a step in that direction. We need homeless court in Greenville because we have a large homeless population in Greenville, whether people are aware of that or not. And when we talk about homelessness, we don't just mean people living on the street all the time. We mean people who are couch surfing. We mean children who are living in a different hotel room every night. We mean housing instability. And when we look at those numbers, Greenville City and Greenville County have a significant homeless problem. And we need to acknowledge that within our community, these issues are going on. And it makes our community safer. It makes our community economically stronger. It makes our community better when we are thinking through creative ways to deal with the issues of homelessness, and often criminal justice involvement is part of that. And so how do we get outside of our silos of social service providers and mental health providers and legal counsel and the courts and work together to say, this is a viable solution for this person and their life, which matters to Greenville and to Greenville County, rather than say, we're going to deal with this piecemeal and never be able to really fix any sort of issue because we're not dealing with the person as a whole.